Revenge with Karen.
I knew something was off when the interns stopped making eye contact. The same kids who used to knock on my door begging for help with their audit decks were suddenly silent as ghosts, tiptoeing past my office like I was contagious. That's when I opened my inbox and saw it, the meeting request. No subject line, just mandatory in all caps and a 9 a.m. slot with HR and Ryan, the CEO's son. My stomach didn't drop. It twisted. Let's rewind a second, because this disaster started weeks before that email, and trust me, you'll want to hear how it ends. My name's Jessica Hart, and I was the closest thing Halcyon Analytics had to a backbone. For 12 years, I was the one who made sure the gears didn't grind themselves into oblivion. My title? Mid-level Ops Director. My real job? Make sure no one accidentally commits a federal crime on a Tuesday. Especially with the big one, $300 million escrow contract with the Department of Information Security. Fancy name, sure, but all it really meant was that we were holding highly sensitive data for the feds. The contract was a beast. Compliance freezes, keyholder credentials, certification chains. You miss one clause and you're legally liable for putting the government's underwear drawer on TikTok. Guess who they listed as the sole escrow custodian? Yep. But no one celebrated that. There was no confetti when I passed all the security reviews or built the protocol handoffs from scratch. I wasn't flashy. I didn't host fireside chats. I didn't slap buzzwords on Post-its and call it innovation. I just did the damn work. And then Ryan showed up. You know the type. MBA freshly minted. Jawline like a Greek statue. Hair gel that cost more than my entire skincare routine. He strutted into Halcyon like he was auditioning for a reboot of Suits, only without the charm. The official announcement said he was joining in a strategic transformation capacity. Unofficially, it meant he was going to play CEO cosplay for a few months and mess with things he didn't understand. At first, I thought maybe he'd keep to the marketing wing, rebrand a few decks, rename a department or two, maybe schedule some useless brainstorming retreats with charcuterie boards and ego stroking. I was wrong. Ryan wanted operations, and he wanted blood. He came in swinging. First day, he asked me why we needed so many steps in the compliance chain, said it was all so analog and maybe we should just streamline the trust process. I blinked. I had to actually blink like maybe my ears misheard. Streamline the trust process. I calmly explained that, per federal requirement, all parties in the escrow agreement had to maintain an immutable audit trail with credentialed oversight. His eyes glazed over before I hit the word immutable. He waved me off. We'll simplify later. Too much red tape kills morale. Sure, Ryan, and a gas leak improves ventilation. I started documenting everything, every convo, every suggestion he made, not because I was scared, because I was suspicious. This wasn't his first demolition derby. Rumor was he'd restructured his last internship so hard the company had to restate earnings. By the end of week 1, he'd already asked for a list of non-essential roles in ops. By week 2, he was holding closed-door meetings with HR. My name had been removed from 3 calendar invites, and my desk. Moved. Not out of the office, no. Moved to the hallway near the printer. Because nothing says we value your experience like toner fumes and passive-aggressive Post-its. But I smiled through it, nodded politely, sent follow-ups, stayed late because I had something he didn't. The keys, not metaphorical ones. Literal digital authentication keys, tied to my name. Tied to the $300M deal. Tied to a clause that no one, especially not Ryan, had bothered to read. And if you're enjoying how this disaster's about to unfold, do me a favor, subscribe and tap the like. Be surprised how many folks listen without hitting that little button. It really helps the team keep sharing stories like this one. Anyway, the Friday before my mandatory meeting, someone from HR asked me to document my processes, just in case you go on vacation. Cute. I stayed up that weekend going over every file. I triple-checked the chain of custody records. My name, my token, my credentials, every single link. I left one note for myself on Monday morning, stuck right next to my coffee mug. Smile. He has no idea what he's about to break. It started with the nickname, Spreadsheet Sorceress. Said with a smirk, in front of 30 people on a Zoom call I hadn't even been invited to. I only knew about it because someone accidentally forwarded the link. Ryan said it like he was being playful. A charming little jab among coworkers. The way his voice curled around it made my skin itch. Jessica's probably got a macro for this, he chuckled after someone asked about reconciling the onboarding logs, or a crystal ball, one of those. Laughter followed, thin, nervous. The kind people use when they don't know whose side they're supposed to be on. That same day, I found my desk reassigned. Not to another office, not even to a cubicle. They moved me next to the printer. The actual printer. Haven't tasted humiliation until you've tried to finish a compliance briefing while a marketing intern prints 300 flyers for the company chili cook-off. No one said anything, not even the ones I'd helped save from Ryan's streamlining. Not the junior project lead I coached through her first compliance review, or the analyst I backed when legal tried to bury him over a misfiled timestamp. They passed by my new post like I was invisible, and even said, "Tough break," under his breath and didn't stop walking. But I wasn't surprised. Ryan had been working the floor like a magician with a grudge. One day he's sharing protein bars and offering to mentor interns. The next he's cornering managers and asking what parts of ops can be automated. I overheard him telling HR that I was hoarding tribal knowledge, whatever the hell that means. What he was really doing was clearing the path for his new hires, two fresh-faced boys with LinkedIn profiles that looked like copy-pastes of Ryan's own. They started shadowing me unannounced, sitting in on my calls, asking weirdly specific questions about systems I designed years ago. I answered everything clearly, professionally. And then, quietly, I exported every document I touched, every credential log, every time-stamped handoff, with my full name on each one. My nights became a ritual. I'd pour a glass of wine, crack open the VPN, and document everything. Like a war historian in real time, preserving the last days before the idiot apocalypse. Meanwhile, Ryan was playing king of the open floor plan. He'd make loud jokes within earshot. We're desiloing ops, burn the spreadsheets, or we're ditching the red tape. Who even reads Claw's junk anyway? That one made me bite my tongue so hard I tasted metal. Removed me from every recurring calendar invite that mattered. He created a new Monday stand-up, then forgot to add me. During team meetings, if I tried to chime in, he'd talk over me like I wasn't there. At one point, I asked a question about the new reporting structure, and he said, "That's adorable, Jessica. But we're going agile now." Adorable. I'd survived 3 CFO transitions, 2 acquisitions, and a literal cyber attack. But now I was adorable. Every insult was delivered with that same smug, performative charm, like he wanted to be caught being cruel just enough to establish dominance. I'd seen dogs do the same thing at the shelter, pissing on the food bowl just to remind the others who it belonged to. And yet, I never snapped, never yelled, never rolled my eyes, because while he was busy playing alpha dog, I was busy building a digital trail so damning it could make the SEC flinch. One night, close to midnight, I opened the custodial registry again. My name was still there. Jessica L. Hart, Escrow Custodian, Federal Compliance Keyholder, no one else listed, no overrides requested, no updates pending. I stared at it for a long time, that little lonely line of text, probably overlooked by everyone, even legal, but it might as well have been the bolt holding the whole machine together. Ryan didn't know, HR didn't know. Hell, not even the CEO had ever asked me directly about it. They just assumed it would keep working, like email or coffee machines or women in the background cleaning up their messes. I closed the file, shut my laptop, and whispered into the darkness of my apartment, "Break it, I dare you." The first sign was subtle. My system permissions changed. Not revoked, shifted, like someone in IT had been given quiet instructions to nudge me out of the driver's seat without waking the passenger. I logged in Monday morning and found my admin panel grayed out for the internal ticketing system. Not critical, but odd, like taking the spare key off your own keyring and pretending you didn't notice. Then came the email from HR. Subject: Team Structure Optimization. 3 paragraphs of corporate gravy about evolving responsibilities and unlocking cross-functional synergies. Buried in the second bullet point was this line: Jessica's current functions will be distributed between our new operations specialists, Kyle and Brent, to promote agility and knowledge redundancy. Redundancy. That was rich. Kyle and Brent, the boy band duo who still didn't know how to parse a version-controlled log, going to inherit a compliance framework it took me 7 years to build. The kind of framework that lived and breathed like a haunted spreadsheet, each formula nested inside policy updates, updated quarterly, signed in blood. I hit reply, typed noted, and hit send. That Friday, a woman from HR I'd never met before stopped by my desk. She was holding a clipboard like it was a hostage. "Hi, Jessica. Mind giving me a rundown of your processes? Nothing intense, just for onboarding." I asked her what processes. "Oh, you know, the ones you do. Just a general overview so the new guys can jump in." I smiled. "Sure. You want that documented or verbal?" "Oh, whichever's faster," so I wrote it all down. Every single step I'd already documented, refined, reviewed, and posted in the internal wiki over the past decade. Only now I printed it out. 3 thick binders, color-coded, indexed, labeled, handed them over Monday morning like a platter of poisoned apples. And I left one thing out: the escrow documentation. Not because I forgot, but because no one asked. The deal was its own beast. It had its own playbook, its own access portal, its own federal watchdogs who checked in quarterly to verify compliance. And unlike everything else I handled, it had my name, legally and contractually, on every document that mattered. Sole custodian. Clause 14.3a required continuity. No transfers without a 90-day resubmission. No backups unless pre-certified by the Department of Information Security. And once the system was in compliance lock, like it had been since March, no edits without breach notification. None of the new guys knew that. Ryan certainly didn't. And HR? Please. They were too busy Googling what a compliance key was, so I watched the dominoes wobble. Ryan walked around that week like he'd just discovered capitalism. Scheduling impromptu ops reorg syncs, assigning Kyle to legacy documentation and Brent to process agility. At one point, he referred to himself as a tactical nucleus in front of the whole team. Someone clapped. Someone else coughed to hide a laugh. Meanwhile, I kept to my printer station. Answered questions when asked. Stayed late finishing backlog tickets no one else understood. And every night, exported a new set of custody logs, each one signed, encrypted, and emailed to my personal offsite archive. Not because I needed to, but because I knew they'd try something soon, and they did. Late Thursday, I got CC'd on a weird internal thread. Legal was asking HR for breakdown of who had access to the escrow portal. Someone replied with a spreadsheet that didn't include me. The next reply, "Is this current?" No one responded. That Friday, Ian stood over my desk like he was about to award me a medal. "Hey Jess," he said, real casual, like we were old friends who hadn't just spent 2 weeks locked in a silent turf war. "Mind doing one last favor? Just jot down how you handle the federal escrow reports. Brent'll be taking that over." I looked up at him. Slowly. "That part's already documented," I said. He blinked. "Where?" "In the contract," I said, and turned back to my screen. Paused, confused. Maybe he thought I meant a vendor contract. Maybe he thought I was being dramatic. But I saw it in his eyes, the flicker of unease, that subtle shift from smug to suspicious. Like he just realized there was a game being played, and he didn't know the rules. That night, I didn't export anything. I didn't need to, because I had already done the one thing no one else in that building had thought to do. I read the fine print. I knew exactly what would happen when they finally pulled the wrong thread. It was the kind of Monday morning where even the sun felt fake. That sickly fluorescent light spilling in through the slatted blinds, bouncing off the sad little vending machine that still hadn't been restocked since the chilly cook-off. I knew the moment I stepped into the building. The air was too still, no usual keyboard chatter, no hallway banter, just that heavy, corporate quiet that only ever means one thing. Someone's about to get screwed. It was me. Of course it was me. 9:03 a.m. HR pinged. "Hey Jessica, can you pop in real quick?" Pop in. Like we were going to chat about wellness perks or the snack budget. I clicked the link, and there he was. Ryan. In a blazer 2 sizes too small, probably bought specifically for this little ritual, leaning back in the chair like he was posing for a stock photo labeled smug termination. "Jessica," he said, all teeth and charm. "Glad you could make it." Next to him sat Trina from HR, who looked like she wanted to evaporate through the floor tiles. "We've reviewed the reorg structure," she began, tapping nervously on a manila folder that I guarantee she hadn't read. "And unfortunately, your role has been reassigned." No shock. I just stared. I wanted to see if they'd flinch. Ryan jumped in, eager to control the narrative. "It's not personal. You've been with us a long time. But your functions are now being distributed across the Agile Transformation Team." I raised an eyebrow. "The Agile Transformation Team? You know," he said, waving vaguely, Kyle and Brent. "Plus, we've looped in finance for cross-support." That's when Trina cleared her throat and slid a single sheet across the table. "Unfortunately, to the nature of the restructuring and the language in your original employment agreement, severance is not applicable in this case." Section 8B covers reassignments under operational pivots. I looked down at the paper, read every word, then read it again just to let the silence stretch a little longer. I could feel Ryan vibrating with smugness beside me, like he was waiting for applause. "No severance," I said finally. Trina nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Wrecked?" Ryan clapped his hands together like he'd just closed a sales deal. "It's for the best, Jess. Really, new era, new systems. Fresh start for everyone. Nothing but love." And then the piece de resistance, he stood up, smoothed his jacket, and strutted out of the room. To the interns gathered near the coffee station, he spread his arms and declared, "Drinks are on me." The dragons finally slain, there it was. The kill shot. Delivered like a punchline from a frat house Shakespeare. I stood slowly, collected the single sheet of paper. No protest, no tears, no "you'll regret this." Just one line as I folded the termination letter and slipped it into my folder. "Thanks for the clarity." I said it with a smile, not a bitter one, not a fake one, just pure, chilled clarity. The kind that comes when you already know how the story ends. Because Ryan thought this was a victory. He thought I was just another relic to dust off and discard. He had no idea that what he'd just unplugged wasn't a coffee maker or a calendar widget. He unplugged the core. I walked back to my desk in silence. No one made eye contact. My inbox was already locked. My access badge blinked red. Ryan moved fast when he was destroying things. I gathered my things, just the essentials. One legal pad, my lucky pen. The USB key I always kept on a chain in my purse. I didn't even bother with the plants. It already started to wilt. Then I walked out, past the printer, past the sad-eyed analysts pretending to type, past Kyle and Brent who wouldn't meet my gaze, out into the parking lot where the air was hot and thick and buzzing with potential. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't look back. That night I logged into the secure portal one last time. My credentials, still active, my role, still listed as custodian, my token, still assigned. I followed standard custodial protocol upon termination. I deactivated it. No override, no backup, no warning. One red flag tripped, silent, instant, and with it, $300 million froze in place. Funny how Ryan never asked who held the keys. Funny how HR never read the clause at the bottom of the contract. Funny how dragons don't breathe fire when they're slain. Sometimes they just smile and lock the damn vault. Wind was sticky that morning, one of those September days that can't decide if it wants to suffocate you or slap you with fall. I stepped outside Halcyon's building with nothing but a manila envelope tucked under my arm, my badge already cut in half and handed over like a parking receipt. No cardboard box. No tearful goodbyes. Just the slap-slap of my heels on the sidewalk and the faint echo of Ryan's voice behind the glass, ready crowing about forward momentum to anyone within earshot. I didn't look back. You don't look back at burning buildings when you know where the gas leak is. I got in my car, drove home with the windows down, no music, just the sound of tires on asphalt and my own thoughts humming like an engine about to shift gears. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sun was starting to dip. Orange bleeding into the sky like it had something to apologize for. Inside, kicked off my shoes, poured a cup of coffee strong enough to strip paint, and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked at me, soft and steady, as if daring me to flinch. I logged in. The Halcyon Escrow system wasn't flashy. No neon dashboards or swiping widgets. Just clean forms, access logs, and a vault of regulatory handoffs so precise they could have been forged in a monastery. Government data escrow isn't about aesthetics. It's about being boring on purpose. You don't want style in the middle of a federal compliance audit. You want cold, unshakable trust. My name was still there. Jessica L. Hart, listed as sole custodian for the $300M contract. Credential chain unbroken. No secondary signatory. No pending replacements. Just me and me alone. I checked the backup protocol. Untouched. I checked the token ledger. All tokens tied to my ID. Check the most important part, transition validation. That's the process that has to be completed before a new custodian can be assigned. It requires 3 internal sign-offs, federal notification, and a 90-day certification window. There wasn't a single request in the system, not one, which meant Ryan had swung the axe without ever checking the route. No one else was authorized to hold the keys. No one had even begun the process of transferring them. Thought I was just another spreadsheet, just another body in a chair. And now the chair was empty. I opened the Secure Credential tab and initiated the standard custodial exit sequence. It's protocol, black and white, plain as day. If a custodian leaves the organization, their token must be deactivated immediately. It's not optional, not personal, just law. I input the command. The system paused. Then confirmed, custodial token revoked. That exact moment, a red flag was tripped in the back end. Silent, automatic, it doesn't alert the office, doesn't send Ryan a push notification, but it logs the breach. And once that happens, the clock starts ticking. Federal compliance oversight gets notified. The $300 million data vault, frozen, no new access, no approvals, no continuation of escrow activity without reinstatement or certified transition. A full halt. I didn't smile. Not yet. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of a dozen years lift from my shoulders like a coat I didn't realize had been soaking wet. I pulled a post-it from the stack on my desk. Wrote one thing, wait for it. I stuck it to the corner of my monitor, right above the webcam Ryan once told me to turn off because Ops doesn't need FaceTime. Then I shut the lid, poured another cup of coffee, and waited. Tuesday hit like a slow-motion car crash. At first, no one noticed. Just a minor hiccup in Ops, a delay. Someone in project management flagged a timeout on the compliance server, but assumed it was the usual Monday hangover echoing into Tuesday. Give it an hour, someone said. It'll self-resolve. It didn't. By 10:12 a.m., JIRA tickets were flying like roaches under a flipped light switch. The $300 million escrow project, Halcyon's golden goose, wasn't moving. No approvals, no credential handoffs, no data packets validated, just frozen screens and escalating dread. Operations pulled their usual tricks, cleared caches, rebooted endpoints, tried a server ping, nothing. The authorization system returned a standard null response, one it only used when the primary credential key was missing. By 11 o'clock a.m., the project manager was pacing outside legal's glass-walled office, voice climbing an octave with every sentence. No, it's not a glitch. No, it's not a config issue. I'm telling you, the whole thing's locked, dead in the water. Inside legal, the associate counsel flipped through the contract binder with growing alarm. Not the pretty summary slides Ryan liked to wave around in exec meetings, but the actual contract, the one signed off by federal oversight, and riddled with footnotes no one had read since the ink dried. There it was. Page 48, Clause 14.3a. The designated escrow custodian must maintain continuous credentialed access. In the event of termination without certified transition, all functions shall enter compliance freeze until full reassignment is validated by federal authority. Translation: someone done goofed, because Jessica L. Hart, former mid-level nobody with a printer-side desk, was still listed as sole custodian. No replacement filed. No 90-day transition requested. No certification in motion. She was the only person legally and technically authorized to approve, manage, or modify the escrow structure. And she was gone. Someone in legal muttered, "Wait, who fired her?" Silence. Calls were made, fast, desperate. Jessica's number rang twice, then straight to voicemail. No callback, no email, no out-of-office reply, just a digital shrug. Ryan, of course, swaggered into the chaos around noon, iced coffee in hand, sunglasses still on like he was walking onto the set of a Netflix docuseries about startups that fail hard and fast. "What's the drama?" he asked, chewing on a straw like it owed him rent. Someone from legal explained, slowly, like you'd explain fire to a caveman holding a gas can. Ryan waved it off. "Can't IT just bypass it? Patch her out?" IT looked like someone had just asked them to perform a seance. One of the senior engineers said, carefully, "No, it's federally locked. The system validates credential lineage. It has to come from the assigned custodian." Jessica was the only one issued a root token, and now that token is revoked. Clean, no dirty trails. Ryan laughed. "Come on, there's always a workaround." "There isn't," the engineer replied. "You fired the only human bypass." That's when Ryan's face started to change. Not full panic yet, or like someone who just realized the fire alarm isn't part of the drill. He started throwing jargon at the room, trying to pin the blame on bad documentation, legacy systems, technical debt, anything but his own ego. But the facts sat in the room like a loaded gun. Jessica had been terminated without a compliance transition plan. The protocol she herself helped write was now doing exactly what it was supposed to do, protecting the federal escrow agreement from internal incompetence. One intern, God bless her nervous little soul, asked, "Can't we just rehire her?" Ryan barked, "We don't need her. Just fix the damn thing. He didn't notice legal quietly dialing someone, or the project manager emailing the client point of contact, a formal incident report titled, Escrow processing delays immediate action required. By 2:00 p.m., internal Slack channels were a graveyard of nervous emojis, frantic pings, and clipped replies. By 3:00 p.m., a federal liaison emailed Halcyon's legal department. We have detected an escrow access interruption. Please confirm status of assigned custodian or initiate recertification paperwork per clause 14.3a. A follow-up line chilled every spine in the room. Failure to respond within 48 hours may trigger breach proceedings. Somewhere across town, Jessica's phone buzzed on her kitchen counter. She didn't answer. By Wednesday morning, the boardroom smelled like stress and printer toner. Not the usual kind, the low-level buzz of quarterly nonsense, but the real kind. That we may have just violated a $300 million federal contract, and no one knows how to fix it kind. Legal had gone full DEFCON. Overnight, the compliance team pulled every version of the escrow agreement, every internal access log, every communication trail involving Jessica Hart. And what they found was worse than they feared. The termination hadn't just been reckless. It had been a direct violation of clause 14.3a. Verbatim. In the event the designated custodian is removed, resigns, or is otherwise made unavailable, the escrow agreement shall enter immediate compliance freeze pending reassignment certification. The assignment requires 1. 90-day advance federal notification, 2. Credential transfer with chain of custody validation, 3. Sign-off by compliance officer and federal data liaison. They had none of it. Jessica had been fired unceremoniously on a Monday. Her replacement, non-existent. The certification window, not started. The chain of custody logs, still bearing her signature as the last active credentialed entity. Meaning, Halcyon Analytics had entered breach. Federal oversight was no longer just asking politely. They were now issuing formal inquiries. Phrases like contractual noncompliance, fiduciary breach, and revocation of escrow authority were showing up in emails CCing board members and outside counsel. At 9:00 a.m. sharp, an emergency executive call was pulled together. The CEO wasn't back yet, still mid-flight from Switzerland. He'd been charming investors over fondue and Q3 optimism. But everyone else was there. Legal, ops, HR, finance, investor relations, and Ryan sitting there like a used car salesman caught keying his own inventory. Let's start with the basics, the acting GC said, voice clipped like a metronome. Who authorized the termination of the designated escrow custodian? All eyes slid to Ryan. He shrugged. HR signed off. It was a structural reorg. I didn't have access to every clause. The head of finance laughed, a single dry bark. You fired the only person holding the vault keys without checking the lock. Ryan snapped. It's not like she told anyone. She didn't warn us. She didn't have to, legal said. The clause has been in every version of the contract since the federal engagement started. We signed off on it. You were briefed when you joined ops. Ryan looked around the room like someone searching for an exit in a burning elevator. Investor relations chimed in, their face pale and tight. We've had 3 inbound calls from partners asking about delays. One of them mentioned hearing about a freeze from their own federal contact. Then, as if summoned by tension, a junior legal assistant, nervous, barely out of law school, peeked into the room with a stack of compliance printouts and a voice like a paper cut. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you asked for the last credential record for the custodian. I found it. She shuffled forward, set the top page gently on the table like it might explode. It read, Custodian of Record, Jessica L. Hart. Silence. You could hear the HVAC kick on. Somewhere, a coffee cup clinked on ceramic. Nobody moved. The acting GC leaned back in her chair, folding her hands slowly. She's the only name in the chain, she said, and her token's been revoked. It triggered the freeze protocol, which, again, we wrote because she told us to. The intern hovered awkwardly, unsure if she was dismissed. Someone waved her out. She fled. Ryan tried to recover. Okay, but what's the fix? We just call her, right? Bring her back in. Throw some cash at it. Hire her as a contractor or whatever. Legal just stared at him. You don't understand, someone finally said from across the table. We don't have leverage, we have breach. System won't even allow a reassignment now without starting the certification clock. Ops pulled up the timeline on the big screen. 79 business days until a new custodian could be cleared. Assuming no errors. assuming federal approval didn't get bottlenecked, assuming the press didn't get wind of this and trigger a reputational audit. Investor relations added, the moment the CEO lands, he's walking into a board nightmare. This deal was our Q4 tentpole. Now, they didn't finish the sentence. Someone finally said it, the question everyone had been dancing around, hoping it would evaporate before it had to be spoken aloud. Who the hell was she? The acting GC turned to the compliance logs, tapped one line. Read aloud without ceremony. Jessica L. Hart, appointed custodian in 2019. Credentialed signatory on all vault access logs. Co-author of Clause 14.3a. And according to this, she tilted the screen to face the room. The only reason we haven't violated federal data protocol so hard they'll be reading about us in Wired. No one spoke. Outside the boardroom, the email pings multiplied. Investors, clients, oversight. The storm had arrived, and Jessica, she hadn't said a word. The CEO landed on runway 3 at 4:38 p.m., stepped onto the tarmac with a half-zipped travel hoodie and the kind of tan that made the boardroom lights feel even colder. His assistant met him at the gate with a printed packet of flagged emails, investor alerts, and a post-it that simply read, Vault frozen, Escrow dead, custodian equals Hart. He didn't even make it to his car before flipping open his phone and barking, get legal. Now, mid-flight, he'd skimmed the subject lines. Escrow access interruption, compliance custodian termination, federal oversight inquiry. But the gravity didn't hit until the in-flight Wi-Fi kicked in and his screen flooded with escalating messages from the Department of Information Security. And that's when it started to crystallize. Something had gone very wrong. By 6:05 p.m., he strode into Halcyon HQ like a storm front. No greetings, no eye contact, just that unnerving calm CEOs get when they're calculating how many heads need to roll before the press release hits. The war room was already full. Legal, ops, finance, compliance, all hunched over laptops and whispering in fragments. The whiteboard had 5 timelines scrawled on it. None of them good. The biggest one read, Escrow, 79 business days minimum. He walked in and didn't sit. What the hell happened? Legal stood up, trying to lead with logic. Sir, the issue began with the termination of Jessica Hart. Jessica who? Hart, operations director. She was listed, still is listed, as sole escrow custodian under Clause 14.3a. He blinked once. And then, as the weight of those words landed, he slammed his paper coffee cup on the table so hard it burst at the seam, hot foam bleeding onto the Q3 revenue forecast. Who the hell did we fire? No one answered at first. Then someone from HR, voice barely above a whisper, said she was let go during the ops restructure. Ryan signed off on it. We assumed her documentation was redundant. Assumed, he growled. Ops tried to jump in, offering a flurry of jargon, distributed access, knowledge handoffs, temporary coverage plans. He raised a hand. Did anyone check the contract? Silence. Finance cleared their throat. It's airtight. It was the only one credentialed. No backups, no alternates, no filed transitions. She triggered a standard custodial exit protocol, revoked her own token. System registered a freeze. Federal oversight pinged us within 18 hours. He turned slowly to the head of legal. You let this happen? Legal didn't flinch. We were never informed of her termination. Her role wasn't flagged as high risk. We only reviewed custodial assignments during quarterly audits. She never made noise. Investor relations added quietly. We've received 5 withdrawal threats since this morning. 2 of them mentioned press inquiries. The CEO didn't respond. He just walked to the wall of windows behind the whiteboard, stared out at the city like it personally betrayed him, and asked again, quieter this time, who the hell did we fire? This time, no one spoke. Ryan wasn't in the room, hadn't shown up since noon. His office light was off, his Slack was silent, and the interns had conveniently forgotten what floor he was on. The CEO turned back to the room, expression colder than the server room. Get her back. Legal hesitated. Sir, we've tried. She's not responding. Calls go to voicemail. Emails bounce. We sent a courier to her apartment, no answer. Then send another, he snapped. Send 5. I don't care. Offer her a contract, a title, a blank check, whatever the hell she wants. Her name back on that vault. Ops piped up too fast. Maybe we could request an emergency override with the federal office. No, legal interrupted. Emergency overrides only apply if the custodian is deceased or indicted. Neither applies here. Finance added grimly, and any unauthorized access attempt now triggers breach penalties. If we screw this up worse, we're looking at federal investigation. maybe worse. The CEO rubbed his jaw. Room was thick with heat and dread. He picked up a nearby report, flipped through it, then threw it down. All this tech, all this automation, and one woman with a clearance badge brought the whole machine to its knees. Silence. Then, almost to himself, she never asked for credit, never made a fuss. She just did the damn job. Someone coughed nervously. The kind of sound that meant this is the part where heads start rolling. He didn't say a word for a long beat, just stared at the coffee stains spreading across the table like a slow disaster. Then, when Ryan walks in here, he said flatly, he better have an answer, or a flight plan. The room stayed still. Nobody wanted to be the one to tell him that Ryan had already left the building. They sent 4 interns to find him, checked every floor, every break room, the parking garage. Someone even pinged the WeWork he liked to haunt when he wanted to think strategically. No sign. Ryan's office was locked, chair pushed in, water bottle half full. His Slack status turned to away around 2:15 p.m. No one had seen him since. The last thing he did before vanishing was try to log into the vault portal. The system flagged it immediately. Unauthorized access. Attempted override from a non-credentialed user. Logged, time-stamped, escalated. 10 minutes later, his badge access was revoked. Security was told to deactivate his building credentials, email access, and mobile token. The system didn't even hiccup. Halcyon Analytics was hemorrhaging investor confidence. The federal agency had stopped responding to emails, and headlines were already teasing phrases like compliance catastrophe and leadership vacuum. The board convened at midnight, bleary-eyed and grim, flipping through spreadsheets they barely understood, muttering legalese like it might save them from the guillotine. By morning, they made a decision. Jessica's name was reinstated as custodian of record. But it wasn't that simple, because Jessica didn't pick up the phone. Not the first time, not the 10th. Her inbox returned a polite autoresponse. Thank you for reaching out. I'm unavailable for internal inquiries at this time. Legal sent a courier with a non-disclosure draft and a handwritten note from the CEO. It was left outside her apartment door. Nothing. Then came the offer. Board approved. Consultant role, high 6 figures. No in-office presence required. Full control of her workflow. Discretion guaranteed. Her name would be placed on internal files with a note. Non-employee, independent authority. No response. 72 hours passed like a funeral procession. Executives whispered in corners. The CEO paced like a ghost. Outside, the press circled. A former Halcyon intern leaked the termination memo to a tech blog, which published it under the headline, How Not to Fire the Vaultkeeper. And Jessica, she wasn't home. She was 2 miles across town, sitting in a corner booth at a cafe that didn't offer Wi-Fi, sipping a cup of dark roast and reading a print newspaper like it was 1995. She wore jeans, a windbreaker, no makeup. Her laptop stayed in her bag. The only sound around her was the clink of silverware and quiet chatter. No phones rang. No urgent Slack messages. No interns fumbled past her with foam lattes and jittery smiles. Just peace. She flipped to page 5, where the business section led with Escrow crisis at Halcyon Analytics Sparks board reshuffle. Subheader, sources say former employee held critical access. Executives under review. She read the whole thing, start to finish. Not for ego, not for revenge, just to see it. Because for 12 years, her name had been buried under other people's wins. Work folded into decks with someone else's face on the front slide. Her insights streamlined. Her documentation stolen, her access taken for granted, until the day they tried to erase her altogether. But now she wasn't just a name, she was the name. She folded the paper slowly, sipped her coffee, and glanced at her phone one last time. Still buzzing, 6 missed calls, 2 voicemails. 1 unread text from a number she didn't recognize. Please, we need you. Just tell us what you want. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She slid the phone face down, leaned back in her chair, and watched a pigeon fight a kwasa bag near the trash can. Then came the thought. Quiet, dry, almost amused. Funny what happens when you finally read the fine print with my name on it. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.